Okay, so in this video, what we're going to do is I'm going to illustrate one of the techniques that we talked about last night, which is the adding of XY data. And again, this is a situation where we have information about crime events or locations of some other phenomenon, but point level data that we are going to read in to ArcMap. But because we have the coordinates, we don't have to go through a geocoding process per se. So the file that we're going to use is an incident level file, the same one that we used last night. And I will, I'm just going to open that up super quick and then we'll walk through the steps. Okay, so what we have here open is the Boston census tract file that we used previously. And I just have that here so that we can get a sense of the distribution with respect to this city. And what we're going to do is we're going to click File and then Add Data, and then here it says Add XY Data. And in this dialog box, what we want to do is we want to specify the file of interest for our purposes. So I just chose the crime incidents from the years 2015 to 2019. And then I will choose the X and Y and then click OK. And then we have to wait just a sec and it should start to reveal the locations in just a sec if everything goes right. Okay, so here what we have now are the locations. We just read in these this information based on the coordinates that were provided. Note that this here, the layer that was added to the map, is a temporary layer, and in order to make it a permanent layer, we will have to export that. So if we right click and go down to data and then export data, and I will call this crime incidents between the years 2012 and 2015. And it should just take a sec, and then it will ask us if we want to add that as a layer to our shapefile. And then we can say yes, and then just get rid of this temporary one. So after a minute or two, you can see that it is filling in with the new layer that we created. That is a permanent layer, so we can get rid of this. And also, what you will see if we open up the attribute table is there are so many observations in this file, so that's why it was taking a little bit longer than normal. But in any event, that is the process whereby we read in the X and Y data using the coordinates. Next, what we're going to talk about is the geocoding process. So I will be right back with that. So in this next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to geocode based on street address. I'm going to geocode the public schools in Boston. It's a file that I downloaded, I believe, from MassGIS. And also, one thing that I wanted to point out was that when I was searching, I found that there are some state level address locators that are available, and they are free to download through the census, but these are the same people who put out not only the data, but also the road files that we used to geocode previously. And so what we're going to do then is we are going to, I downloaded those data, and then I extracted them into a folder, and it was called 2012 address feature address locator. the underscore 25 refers to the FIPS state code for Massachusetts, which is 25. And you see here we have these 3 files. All of them will be used in just a sec. So what we're going to do again is we'll click File and then Add Data. And then this time we're going to click on Geocoding and then Geocode Addresses. And if it doesn't show up immediately, we can locate that address file by navigating to where it is saved. And here we just have to remember where we saved it. And if we point the program to it, it will then show up in this window here. We highlight it and click OK. And then we're going to get a secondary window that pops up. And here is where we are going to specify the text file or the file that contains the address information that we want to map. And in this case, I have a file called Boston Public Schools. And when I click this menu, this arrow here, I'm going to be looking for the street address because that is the column that includes the street address for the school. The secondary information that we're going to use is the zip code. So if there are similar addresses for schools, they will be differentiated based on their zip codes. And so here I'm going to save I'm just going to call this public schools. And I also am going to click on this button here, geocoding options. A lot of times these are unchecked. I just want to see what the coordinates are, and then the percent along shows us how far into the street segment a given address is. And then we click OK. And if everything goes well, it should only take a sec. And what you see here is that using this information, we were able to match 92% of the cases, leaving 10 to rematch. And I won't go over the whole process of rematching, but know that we can, when we are asked, we can take a look at the information that didn't match and look for potentials. So here we have an address 240 Medford Street, zip code 2129, and you see here this is a perfect match, but these other ones are included because we had, again, a setting for potential matches that was set to, I think, I can't remember, 65 maybe, or 60. And when we take a look at this, first you see that they are all in a very similar location, but we have a perfect match here. And when we have 100%, because we specified that we didn't want the ties or potential matches to be decided by ArcMap, we are going to do it. So we'll click match there, and then we're going to go through and match all of these. It looks like, at least for the first 2, there may be a number of a lot of good matches because there are similarities in street. And so here we have Kearsarge Avenue, and you see here the zip code is 2119. So if we put a 0 in front of that, let's see what happens. It doesn't change. Let's see, does it change anything? So let's take another look. And it looks like of these, this is the one that has the closest address, with all of the characteristics, so we'll match that. Let's see, the 100 the Fenway. I'm not sure what that's all about. Well, if we just remove the, looks like we have a match. And we'll go on through these, and then ultimately we will have a completed geocoded file. And again, keep in mind that what we want to do is we want to have a file that has a minimum of 85% successful geocoded cases, or a hit rate of 85%. Of course, we want to go through and have as many as possible. Also keep in mind that when we are working through this process, we want to bring to bear information that we have, and even if we have to consult or refer to additional sources or the original data, we just want to make sure that we get this, get these matches correct. And again, it's not just a matter of matching, we want to get correct matches. So if we have questions about some, or if we are not entirely sure, it's better idea to not match than to just match with some uncertainty. So those are the two processes that we talked about. Of course, what we're also going to want to do, if we once we've gone through the geocoding, is we can export the data. And I will just call this public schools. And now we can get rid of this. And you see that when we open the attribute table, we still have the same number of schools. And when we have match scores or match types, it will tell us that information, and also the value, the records that were not matched. These observations that have a match score of 0 are not shown. They're not displayed on the map, but we do have data for them. We're just not able to match them because either the address was wrong, or we couldn't find a suitable, we couldn't differentiate, or we couldn't make a decision based on potential matches. So in any event, those are the two processes we use when we are adding information to the map, either when we have the coordinates already or when we want to assign coordinates to them. So those were the big things that we talked about last night. If you have any questions about the process, or if you're having trouble with your specific data, let me know, and we can find a time to talk about it and get it sorted out. Thanks, everyone. Bye. So I'm sorry, I almost forgot one last thing. Something that came up last night that I did want to talk about was the creating of a image file so you can export the maps. Also, I thought it would be a good idea to go over the layout functionality one more time. And again, what we're going to do here is there's this little button right next, and this is where we will create the layout. If we want to keep it in a portrait mode, we can just leave it as is. If we want to change it to landscape, we'll go to page and we'll click on file, and then go to page and print setup. And we'll change it to landscape here. And I will just change the shape so that it fits within. And let me see, I'll go back and just make it a little bit bigger. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part, but I just wanted to go through the layout process quickly one more time. And so you have some idea about, or you have another example of how this is done. So what I will do here is I will, we can do a couple of things. One, you can make sure that you have the layout toolbar enabled as we do here. Or you can, and that will allow you to change, for example, like use one of the pre-made templates. What we're going to do here is I'm just going to keep it as it is, and I'm just going to add the features that we need quickly, and then export it. So all of the items we're going to have to add are found underneath the Insert menu. And so for title, I will click and I will give this a title. I'll name it something like you would want to name a map that you use in your project, perhaps. But this would be something like the distribution of public schools across census, or we can do across neighborhoods. Boston, Massachusetts, 2012, and we'll say okay. And that should add a title. We are going to also need to add a north arrow. Remember, it's real easy to add one that looks real fancy, but you run the risk of having it be a little bit distracting, or it will take attention away from the map itself. So we need a title, we need a north arrow, we need a scale bar. And again, the thing to keep in mind with the scale bar is that we want it to display units that are intuitive. And so in this case, miles is a reasonable option. If we just don't want to have something like decimal degrees or knots or nautical miles, something that is a valid measure. It's just not one that we use too much. Again, when we're thinking about this, the items, two things we want to keep in mind are the audience and the medium. And finally, what we're going to do is we are going to add a legend. So the first thing we will do is we will click on Insert and then Legend, and we're going to get a whole, we're going to have to go through a series of windows. So these are the only two layers we have open, and we will keep them. Also, remember that we want to change the name of these layers, or we will want to change the name of the layers to make them more readily understandable by the reader. And so let's see, we have all of these legend items, and we'll just keep everything at its default, and you'll see it will create this legend here. And what you'll see is that while it does correctly identify the layers that are shown, you see how the names are not that clear, and the underscore, we don't want to use that. So what we will do is we can go back to the mapping window, and if we click on the little green dot, we can look for, we can type schools, and we can look for something that we think will be maybe a little bit better, and we'll add the schools. If we don't necessarily like the color, we can add that here. That would have been good for Halloween, but we'll keep it anyways. So if we go back to the layout, you'll see that these changes were made, but we still have this issue of the layer names. And so here we can click and then click again, and make the changes. And then here, Boston.110422, these would be, these are census tract boundaries or neighborhoods. So I will call this neighborhood boundaries. And you see that it's immediately updated. We can also call this, we can call this neighborhoods. We could also call this tract boundaries. So now that we have not only done the geocoding, made the maps, and this is the map that we wanted to use, what we will then do is export this as an image file. So the way that we do that is we go to File and then Export Map. And then another window will open up, and let me just navigate to where we are saving all of this stuff. And I'm going to save this as public schools. .jpg, and again, I recommend using JPEG or PNG. TIFF files tend to be too big. I'm not really sure what some of these other ones are, but again, we're saving this map as an image file that we can then copy onto a poster or copy into a paper, or otherwise, make use of outside of the mapping program itself. And I will click Save, and very quickly what we will see is that, scroll all the way down, we have this JPEG image that is public schools, and that is our layout and how we export that. So if you have questions about that, or if also keep in mind that there are options for changing the layout format, and these are all these tools are available in the toolbar, the layout toolbar, and we can toy around with that. Just keep in mind that the idea is to create a map that is not distracting. These templates can be really useful and really nice, and there is something cool about the uniformity if you find one that you like, to use that throughout your map. But the key here is to present the information in a way that is useful for the reader. All right, thanks everyone, and good luck with your mapping, and I'll talk to you soon.